Imagine you arrive in Rome at sunset. The air is warm. The sky is the colour of peach and fire. Tourists move slowly through the streets, laughing, taking photos, licking gelato like it's the sweetest thing on earth. A street musician plays the violin near a fountain. Someone pops a bottle of wine. Someone throws a coin in the Trevi fountain and makes a wish. From the outside, life here looks perfect. But now, shift the camera. Step away from the crowd. Turn down a quiet side street. Go up 4 floors in an old building that smells like pasta, laundry soap, and dust. Inside a small apartment, a 28-year-old Italian sits at a kitchen table. His laptop is open. The screen is full of job listings. His bank account shows euros 83. He has 2 degrees. He speaks English. He did everything aright. And yet, he is still living with his parents, sharing a room with his younger brother, and sending out CV-like messages in bottles, hoping one of them will finally reach land. This is the other Italy. Not the postcard, not the movie set, not the dream, the real one. The one where youth unemployment is high, where internships never end, and where a maybe one day becomes a quiet, heavy sentence that sits inside your chest like a stone. He scrolls through offers: unpaid internship, 6-month contract, maybe renewal, part-time, weekends, flexible opportunity. All of them promise experience. None of them promise a future. He laughs, not because it's funny, but because it feels unreal. Then his mother opens the door and asks gently, "Any news?" He smiles back. A soon maybe. They both know what that means. A not yet. A not yet. Southern Europe is beautiful, but for many young people, beauty has become a trap. Cities like Rome, Athens, Lisbon, Barcelona feel like museums where you are allowed to watch life, but not really live it. You grow up hearing how lucky you are to be born somewhere so full of culture, food, history, and sunshine. But culture doesn't pay rent, sunshine doesn't give you stability, history doesn't buy groceries. Tourists can come, spend, take photos, leave, and say, "Wow, what paradise." The locals stay, study, work hard, and somehow drift in circles. It creates a strange double life. By day, the streets are full of visitors, flooding the cafes and plazas. By night, many apartments are dark, not because nobody lives there, but because nobody can afford the electricity bill, or because the young people who used to live there have moved back in with their parents. And here is the quiet tragedy. You start to feel like a guest in your own country. Like the city belongs more to tourists than to you. Like your dreams are extra, optional, not important. Slowly, this does something to your mind. You begin to lower your expectations. Instead of dreaming about building something, you start hoping only to survive. Instead of asking, "What do I want to become?" you ask, "What can I tolerate?" The system trains you not to dream, but to endure. And when older politicians on TV say, "Young people today are lazy," they don't want to work, they just complain. It cuts deep, because the truth is different. Young people do want to work. They just want work that pays fairly, respects their time, values their skills, and offers a path forward. But what they find is often the opposite: temporary contracts, tendless waiting, promises instead of progress. So more and more of them leave. The airplane becomes the real graduation ceremony. You say goodbye to your family at the airport. Your mother cries quietly. Your father pretends he is fine, but you can see the sadness in his eyes. You hug your friends like you're closing a chapter of a book. And then Berlin, London, Paris, Amsterdam. Suddenly, you send your CV and someone replies. Suddenly, you interview and someone says, "Oh, we like your work." Suddenly, you realize the problem was never you. It was the system that raised you and then forgot to make space for you. This is the heart of the story. Southern Europe is not losing beaches or monuments. It is losing something far more precious: its future. Every plane leaving with young, educated people inside is like taking bricks out of a house. One by one, quietly, slowly, until one day the house is still standing, but it is empty. Tourists will still come. Photos will still be taken. The sunsets will still look beautiful. But beauty without opportunity becomes a museum. And museums are not made for living, they are made for remembering what used to be alive. Life in Southern Europe often looks like a dream from the outside, but for many young people it feels more like a quiet trap. And this trap has a simple name: work that pays too little to actually live. In cities like Milan, Barcelona, Lisbon and Athens, you can find thousands of young adults with degrees, skills and big hopes who still earn around €1,000 a month and sometimes even less. They work long hours, they take buses across town in the dark, they answer emails at night. They smile at customers and say yes, of course, even when they are tired. Yet when the end of the month comes, their paycheck disappears in a few hours. Rent, food, transport, maybe a phone bill, maybe some medicine, and then nothing is left. They do not buy new clothes. They do not travel. They do not travel. They count coins before ordering coffee. Many live with their parents not because they want to, but because the numbers simply do not work. And when someone asks, "Why don't you move out?" they laugh, because the rent for a small room costs more than half their salary. It is strange. They are adults on paper, but teenagers in practice, waiting for a future that never really arrives. They jump from one short contract to another, a 6-month job, then 3 months, then a trial period. Employers promise experience instead of stability. Governments talk about reforms, but nothing changes fast enough. Over time, the word "a dreamer" becomes smaller. First, they stop thinking about owning a home. Then they stop thinking about having kids. Then they stop thinking about any long plan at all. Instead, they focus on the next bill, the next invoice, the next month. This slow pressure shapes everything. Couples delay marriage. Friends meet less because nobody can afford dinners out. People avoid going to the doctor because it costs too much. Meanwhile, tourists pay more for one weekend holiday than some locals earn in 2 weeks, and this contrast feels almost unreal. Parents feel guilty because they cannot help forever. Children feel guilty because they cannot stand on their own. Everyone keeps smiling in public, but inside there is worry and quiet fear. The saddest part is how normal it becomes. Young people begin to think, maybe it's my fault, maybe I am not good enough. But it is not laziness, it is not lack of effort. It is an economic model that creates workers who are always busy yet always broke, and when a better offer appears abroad, maybe in Berlin, maybe in Dublin, the decision suddenly looks simple: leave or stay and slowly shrink. Many choose to leave, not because they hate their country, but because they want a life where work leads somewhere, where effort is rewarded, where the future feels open instead of locked behind glass. Those who stay often carry a quiet sadness, as if they are watching life move forward without them. This is the reality of the working poor. You are not unemployed, but you are still stuck, still dependent, still afraid to make plans. It is not dramatic on the surface. There are no explosions, no big scene, just small daily losses of hope, of confidence, of time, until one day you realize you are older, still waiting, still telling yourself, and maybe next year. Now zoom out from the streets and look at the country from above. You start to notice something strange. The cities are full, the cafes are busy, the buses are crowded. But when you look closely, most of the people making decisions, running offices, sitting in parliament, leading companies, and shaping policy have grey hair. Southern Europe is getting older, and not slowly, but fast. But fast. The population pyramid has flipped. Instead of many young people and fewer old, you now have the opposite. Many elderly citizens and fewer young ones. It looks harmless at first. Old people are loved. They are parents and grandparents. They hold memories, traditions, and wisdom. The problem is not that they exist. The problem is that almost all power is arranged around them. Elections tell the truth. Politicians do not whisper it, they simply follow the math. Older people vote more, they vote regularly, and there are more of them than ever before. So when governments write budgets, they ask one question first: what will make older voters happy? And the answer is usually the same: protect pensions, protect benefits, protect the systems that already exist. Meanwhile, schools, research, innovation, and support for young families come later, if there is money left. Often, there isn't. You can see this invisible force everywhere. A young couple thinks about having a child, then looks at their paycheck, rent, and job stability and decides, not now. Another year passes, then another. Soon, not now turns into maybe never. Birth rates fall. Kindergartens empty. Small schools close. Villages lose their last children and become quiet like museums. Yet, medical centres get bigger, retirement homes expand, and pharmacies never stop working. It is not evil. It is simply the logic of a society that has become older than its dreams. Inside the workplace, the same pattern repeats. Promotions and leadership roles often go to those who have stayed the longest, not those with the best ideas. Seniority wins over merit. A new engineer arrives, full of curiosity, wanting to change systems, improve processes, build something modern. His supervisor smiles, pats him on the shoulder, and says, "Calm down. This is how we have always done it." 10 years later, the same engineer is still waiting for permission to try something different. Eventually, he stops asking. Slowly, the country becomes careful, too careful. Afraid of risk, afraid of change, afraid of failing. But progress needs risk. Startups need risk. Science needs risk. Science needs risk. Politics needs risk. When every decision is made to avoid discomfort, nothing new happens. The world keeps moving, but you stand still. Meanwhile, the tax burden grows heavier on the young. They pay for schools they didn't attend anymore, hospitals they rarely use, pension systems they are not sure will exist for them. Many feel like they are carrying a weight placed on their shoulders long before they were born. They love their grandparents, but they ask quietly inside, who will look after us when it's our turn? In families, the tension shows up in small ways. Grandparents tell stories of how they found jobs quickly, bought houses young, raised families on one salary. They speak with pride, and sometimes confusion. They don't understand why their grandchildren cannot do the same. Work harder, they say. Be patient, but patience today does not create the same results. The economy simply changed. Housing is expensive. Contracts are temporary. Opportunities are fewer. Yet the conversation rarely changes, and misunderstanding grows like a silent wall between generations. Politically, this creates a strange loop. Because older voters prefer stability, leaders promise stability. They rarely talk about bold reform, daring innovation, new industries, or long-term transformation. They talk about security, protection, and keeping things as they are. Young people watching this feel invisible. Their problems are not discussed. Their future is not debated, so they disengage. They vote less, protest sometimes, complain online, and then pack their bags for somewhere else. And every time one leaves, the problem becomes worse. Fewer young people remain. The voting population becomes even odder. Policies become more focused on the past instead of the future. It is like trying to drive forward while staring only at the rearview mirror. All of this creates a quiet sadness across entire countries. Streets are full, but there is little movement. Cafes are loud, but conversations feel tired. The energy that comes from youth, impatience, ambition, boldness, slowly fades. Tradition becomes heavy instead of beautiful. Culture turns into a souvenir instead of a living force. This is what a gerontocracy really is. Not a cartoon world ruled by old villains, but a soft, slow system where age decides everything, where institutions grow older, leaders grow older, and ideas grow older, while the young are asked to wait politely outside. And here is the final irony. Older generations often want the same thing the young want, a strong, hopeful country, but without new voices at the table, without fresh ideas, without space for those who will actually live in the future, eating itself. And each year, it becomes harder to change. A nation cannot move forward if its future is always postponed. And in much of southern Europe, the future is not only postponed, it is quietly leaving on airplanes, suitcase by suitcase, seat case seat, disappearing into the clouds. For years, families in southern Europe believed one promise: if you study hard, you will be safe. Mothers repeated it at dinner. Teachers repeated it in class. Politicians repeated it on TV. The path seemed clear. School, university, graduation, job, stability. So parents saved money. Students stayed up late, drank coffee, highlighted textbooks until the pages almost tore. Many became the first in their families to go to college. The day they walked on stage in the graduation gown, everyone clapped and cried. It felt like the door to the future had finally opened. But when the party ended and the photos were framed, something unexpected happened. The door did not open, it stayed locked. And outside that locked door was a long, quiet line of other graduates, all holding the same papers, the same dreams, the same tired smiles. Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, everywhere the same problem. Too many degrees, not enough real jobs. You see cafes full of young people with laptops. You think they are digital nomads. Many are not. Many are sending CV, waiting for replies that never come, refreshing their email every few minutes like a ritual. Universities kept producing more diplomas, but the economy did not produce enough places for them to go. It is like building thousands of ships and discovering there is no water to sail on. So people with master's degrees work in call centres, engineers sell shoes, biologists serve coffee, lawyers do unpaid internships for years. Nobody tells them they failed. Instead, the system quietly whispers, "Adjust your expectations." The saddest part is how normal it begins to feel. You hear stories like, "At least you have something, be grateful, it's experience." And so, millions accept jobs far below their skills. They learn to hide their education in interviews because employers fear they will leave. They stop mentioning they have a second degree. They stop mentioning they speak 3 languages. They start pretending to be smaller than they really are, just to fit into tiny opportunities. Inside universities, professors keep teaching theory, writing papers, giving lectures about great discoveries and big thinkers. But outside, the world moves faster. Technology grows, new industries appear, and employers search for practical skills that the system rarely teaches. The result is painful, highly educated, poorly prepared for real jobs. A strange mismatch, like training marathon runners, then building no roads. Governments like to show statistics about education levels rising. It looks impressive on charts. But what happens after graduation is rarely discussed. There is little connection between study and employment. Little guidance, little bridge between classroom and workplace. Many students walk across that gap alone and fall. This creates a quiet psychological wound. When you study for years and still cannot find a job, you start to doubt yourself. Maybe I chose the wrong field. Maybe I'm not talented. Maybe I'm the problem. But often the problem is structural. Economies stuck in tourism, bureaucracy, low-tech services, few investments in research, startups, innovation. Countries talk proudly about history and spend little on the future. And then comes the moment that repeats in thousands of homes, the conversation about leaving. A son sits at the table and says, "I got an offer in Germany." A daughter whispers, "There's a lab in Canada that wants me." Parents smile with pride, but behind the smile there is a small break in the heart, because everyone knows what it means. The degree they paid for, the brain they helped grow, the talent they raised, will now build someone else's country. This is the real cost of the diploma bubble. Not just wasted money, not just delayed adulthood, but lost human capital, the best minds quietly exported. Italy, Spain, Greece invest years in students. They pay for schools, universities, hospitals, infrastructure. They raise citizens. Then Northern Europe, America, Canada, Australia welcome them with open arms and say, "We've been waiting for you." And just like that, the future moves away. Those who stay often live between two worlds, overqualified for the job they have, underpaid for the work they do. They feel stuck, too educated to give up, too trapped to move ahead. Many hide their pain behind humour. "I have a master's degree in serving tables," they joke, but inside it hurts. This slow erosion of talent has consequences you cannot see right away. Fewer startups, fewer laboratories, fewer new companies, fewer bold ideas. Politics becomes older, workplaces become slower, society becomes more afraid of change. A country without opportunities becomes a country that recycles the past instead of creating the future. And here lies the irony. The promise was, study and life will open. Instead, the truth became, study and then stand in line. Not because education is useless, but because systems failed to keep up with the dreams they encouraged. So when you walk through Europe and see cafes filled with young people reading, writing, talking about art, philosophy, science and travel, do not assume they are free. Many are simply waiting, stuck between potential and reality, wondering how long they can keep believing. Because a diploma should be a key, but here, too often, it is just a beautiful piece of paper pressed gently against a locked door. There is a secret rule that everyone in Southern Europe learns early, even if nobody writes it down. It sounds something like this: what you know matters, but who you know matters more. You hear it in jokes, you hear it in whispers, you hear it in the quiet voice inside your head when you send another CV into the void. People call it connections, favors, a little push. But, in truth, it feels like an old feudal world hiding under modern clothes. Imagine two young people. One works hard, finishes school, builds skills, learns languages, stays up late watching tutorials and reading books. The other has an uncle in an office, a cousin in the council, a family friend who knows someone. When a job opens, the first sends documents, writes a careful cover letter, waits weeks for a reply that never comes. The second gets a call, come in tomorrow. We'll figure something out. No interview, no competition, just doors quietly opening. And everyone pretends it was merit. Inside companies, this becomes normal. Promotions go not to the person with the best ideas, but to the one who stays loyal, stays silent, does not question. Creativity looks dangerous. Honesty looks rude. The safest path is to blend in, shake hands, agree with the boss, and avoid anything that might disturb the calm. Over time, offices stop feeling like places of work. They start to feel like small kingdoms, ruled not by talent, but by hierarchy. For young people, this is exhausting. And so they are told, study, improve yourself, learn, try. Then they step into the real world and discover another rule. Wait your turn, not 5 years, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. Be patient, older colleagues say. Your time will come, but time is not the same for everyone. Some wait, stuck in short contracts. Others skip the line, walking straight into good positions with half the effort. This is not always illegal. It is usually soft, quiet, polite. A favour here, a recommendation there, a phone call that changes everything. But the effect is powerful. It kills motivation, because if effort and reward are no longer connected, why try so hard? Why take risks? Why dream big? Many talented people feel like they are shouting through glass. No, they bring new ideas, suggest better systems, talk about faster methods, digital tools, more efficient processes. The answer is often the same, a calm down. We don't do that here. Tradition becomes a shield. Comfort becomes an excuse. Progress is postponed again and again. And while the insiders protect their spots, the outsiders slowly disappear. Some move abroad, where interviews focus on skills, portfolios, projects, not uncles and cousins. For the first time, someone looks at their work and says, "This is good, we need you." The feeling is shocking and painful, because you realize you were never broken. You were simply standing in the wrong system. Others stay but shrink. They keep their heads down. They stop suggesting things. They stop imagining life beyond their contract. They come to work, do what they are told, go home, sleep, repeat, repeat. Over time, something inside them goes quiet. Not anger, not drama, just tiredness. And society pays the price. When the same families keep the same positions, new ideas struggle to enter. Startups stay small. Research moves slow. Public offices stay outdated. Citizens wait in long lines for simple tasks. Technology arrives late. Paper continues to rule. Everything takes time, and nobody knows why. But the root is simple. Systems built around loyalty instead of merit are good at surviving, not at improving. The irony is that everyone knows this, yet nobody wants to say it out loud. At dinners, people laugh, find a connection. Parents tell their kids, let me talk to someone. Friends share contacts, not because they are corrupt, but because they know the game. If you don't play, you lose. If you play, you feel guilty. There is no clean way out. This culture shapes politics too. Leaders often surround themselves with friends, allies, old schoolmates, people they trust. Fresh voices rarely rise. Young reformers leave or are pushed aside. Debates feel like theatre. The same arguments, the same faces, repeating the same lines, while the world outside changes. And the worst consequence is invisible. Confidence disappears. A child watches all of this and learns the lesson early. Talent is not enough. Work is not enough. Fairness is optional, so ambition becomes thin. Instead of asking, how great can I become? They ask, who can help me survive? A country cannot build a strong future with that question. A healthy society rewards effort, invites new minds, opens doors to those who deserve them. But in too many places, the ladder is broken or worse, guarded by gatekeepers who climbed it long ago and now refuse to move. So the brightest leave, the rest adapt. And the nation quietly loses what it needs most, faith that merit matters. Because once people stop believing that hard work leads somewhere, the engine of progress doesn't explode. It simply slows down. Then one day it stops. The story begins with Thiago, a nurse who works night shifts in Lisbon, who helps strangers breathe, calms families when they panic, and walks home in the early morning when the sky is the colour of milk. But lately, there is something strange about his walk. The city he grew up in no longer feels like his. The small bakery where he bought bread as a kid is now a cosy, short-term rental. The old neighbour who used to water her plants has moved out because her landlord realised he can earn triple the money from tourists. Doors that once opened to families now open to suitcases with stickers. Every street seems to have a keypad lock. Every balcony has the same white plastic chairs, and every building smells not like home, but like vacation. It did not happen overnight. First came the tourists, then the digital nomads, then the investment blogs that said, buy an apartment here, rent it out, easy money. Rents rose fast, not slowly, not quietly, but like a wave that keeps climbing. Suddenly, Thiago's landlord told him the price would double next year. Not because the apartment changed, not because salaries increased, but because people from London, New York, Berlin, and Paris were now bidding on the same room he lived in. Rents became global, salaries stayed local, and in that gap, people like Thiago were pushed out. Across Spain, Portugal, and Italy, the numbers broke records. More planes, more cruises, more hotel nights, more short-term stays than ever before. Governments smiled, tourism meant money, streets looked alive. But if you stayed long enough, you noticed something hollow. Fewer children in the courtyards, fewer grocery stores, more luggage shops, more souvenir stands, more bars serving the same authentic food to people who fly out 2 days later. Neighborhoods turned into sets, like movie stages pretending to be real life. Locals tried to fight back. In Barcelona, people marched with signs saying, "This is not a theme park." In Venice, they shouted that their city was drowning, not only in water, but in visitors. In Lisbon, stickers appeared on doors. Homes are for living. Yet each protest felt like shouting into wind because money flowed faster than rule. City councils discussed regulations, limits, caps, registrations, taxes, long meetings, slow debates, while every week another apartment disappeared into the short-term rental market. And the people affected most were often the ones who served the city: nurses, teachers, waiters, cleaners, students, young families. They moved farther away, added hours to their commute, watched more of their pay vanish into rent. Some slept in shared rooms, some returned to their parents' houses, some simply left the country. Meanwhile, influencers filmed hidden gems, digital nomads posted about a cheap paradise, and landlords called it opportunity. But the cost is quiet and heavy. When locals leave, the soul leaves too. You lose gossip between neighbours, the smell of soup from the window, kids playing football in narrow streets, old men arguing about politics in the square. Instead, you hear rolling suitcases, English menus, and the same playlist playing in every cafe. Thiago feels it most after work. He sits on a bench, drinks cheap coffee, opens his phone, and searches for apartments. Each time the same message appears: a sorry already booked, not rented for years, booked for weekends. And slowly a feeling grows inside him that hurts more than tired feet or long shifts. He feels like a guest in his own hometown, as if the city is politely saying, "A thank you for your service, but please step aside." Policy talks continue, new laws are proposed, officials promise balance, but for people like Thiago, the change came too late. He looks at flights to another country, where maybe rent is still connected to human life, not to global bidding wars. And this is the true disaster of the Airbnb apocalypse. Not just expensive housing, not just noisy tourists, but the quiet moment when someone born in a place realizes the place no longer has room for them. And the city, beautiful and shining for outsiders, slowly forgets the people who once called it home. There is another quiet tragedy happening at the same time. One you cannot film easily because it happens in airports, in small apartments, and in late-night phone calls between parents and children. It is the slow goodbye of a country losing its future. Imagine a graduation ceremony in Rome. The families are proud, the students throw their hats in the air, and everyone smiles for the photos. But hidden under the celebration is a strange truth. Many of those young people are not celebrating the start of a life in Italy. They are celebrating their ticket out. They will pack their bags, learn new languages, and search for real opportunity in Berlin, London, Paris, Toronto, anywhere that talent is rewarded and the system does not feel like a wall. This wave even has a name in Italian: O fuga di cervelli, the flight of brains, and it is not small. Over the last decade, hundreds of thousands of educated Italians, engineers, doctors, designers, scientists, teachers have left. A country that already spends money to educate them then watches as that investment walks through the airport gates and disappears into another country's economy. You can see why they leave when you look closer. Many jobs pay little. Promotions depend less on what you can do and more on who you know. Offices feel like tiny kingdoms ruled by seniority, not merit. A brilliant young designer sits under a boss who has not updated his skills since the 1990s. A doctor works on temporary contracts for years with no security. A researcher waits for funding that never comes. They are told, be patient. Wait, maybe someday. Abroad, the message is different. Show us what you can do, and we will pay you for it. So the choice becomes painful, but simple. And when they leave, something strange happens back home. Streets stay full, cafes are busy, but there is less life behind the numbers. Fewer startups appear. Fewer new ideas grow. Politics becomes older, slower, more tired, because the people who could push for change are gone. Parents visit empty bedrooms and pretend they are happy because at least their children found work. Zoom calls replace Sunday lunches. A whole country starts exporting diamonds, its brightest mines. And in return, it often imports low-paid, unstable jobs. It feels like trading gold for sand. Cities also change. Neighborhoods that once had students and young families now have tourists, retirees, and short-term workers. The energy that drives innovation, risk, and creativity thins out. You see fewer experiments, fewer dreams, only plans that feel safe. Meanwhile, those who stay behind face a heavier burden. They must support an aging population, pay more taxes, and try to rescue systems that are slowly breaking. They feel loyal, but also trapped. This creates a deep emotional wound. Young people grow up loving their country, the food, the history, the friendships that last from childhood. But when adulthood arrives, the country feels like it does not love them back. It asks them to sacrifice, to wait, to accept less. So they leave with mixed hearts, sadness, guilt, excitement, hope. At airports, you can often see tears and smiles at the same time. Governments talk about plans to bring them home, but the real problem is not flights or tax breaks. It is culture. It is culture. It is the idea that age always beats talent, that rules cannot change, that it is dangerous to let young people lead. Until that mindset shifts, the planes will keep taking off, and every departure is not just one person leaving. It is a lost company that might have been created. A medicine that might have been invented, a movement that might have changed politics, a future that simply never arrives. In the end, the brain drain is not noisy. There are no protests in the streets, no sign, just airport doors sliding open one after another, and a country slowly realizing that the most precious thing it owns, the people who could build tomorrow, are building tomorrow somewhere else. After the exodus of young talent, another quiet tragedy takes hold. One that is almost invisible if you only glance at the streets and the piazzas. Southern Europe, a region that gave the world philosophy, art, and architecture, is beginning to resemble a museum. You can walk through Rome or Athens, stroll along Lisbon's cobbled streets, and feel the history pressing down on you. The monuments are breathtaking, the cafes buzzing with tourists, but look closer, something is missing. The energy, the chaos, the electric spark of new ideas, the things that make a country alive, are quietly vanishing. This is the innovation vacuum, the cultural stagnation that follows the brain drain. The smartest minds, the engineers, designers, entrepreneurs, and researchers, have left, taking their curiosity and risk-taking instincts with them. They are building companies, writing code, developing technology in Berlin, London, or San Francisco. Their energy fuels foreign economies while their homeland remains trapped in the past. A young software engineer in Milan, who could have been Italy's next tech star, is instead building the next big app in Berlin. A marine biologist from Lisbon, who could have transformed local research in sustainable fisheries, is now crunching data for a multinational company in Copenhagen. With the innovators gone, the home economy becomes predictable, risk-averse and reliant on safe bets, tourism, agriculture, traditional crafts. It is a country frozen in nostalgia, proud of its history, but incapable of producing a new one. Italy is famous for pasta and fashion. Spain is famous for fiestas and beaches. Portugal is famous for cobbled hills and pastéis de nata. But these cultural treasures, though beautiful, cannot compete with the global economy of innovation. The world moves forward, and these nations watch from the sidelines. This vacuum extends beyond economics. In Milan, tech conferences are polite but sleepy. In Lisbon, startups are small and often struggle to scale. The culture of experimentation, the willingness to challenge old ideas, is fading because the people who would do that have left. Low investment in research and development worsens the problem. Governments, squeezed by debt and bureaucracy, rarely fund high-risk projects. Universities churn out graduates, but the market cannot absorb them. Without a tech ecosystem, without mentors, investors, and networks, even the ambitious have nowhere to grow. The result is a feedback loop. Those who remain see that talent is not valued at home, so they leave too. The museum effect is subtle but deadly. A country can appear vibrant to outsiders, yet quietly hollow from within. When new ideas stop being born, societies do not collapse dramatically. They die softly, quietly, over decades. And then there is the debt, the invisible weight that the young now inherit. Italy alone carries roughly $2.08 trillion in public debt, about 140% of GDP. Greece, Spain, and Portugal hover above 100%. Debt in itself is not necessarily harmful. Borrow money to build factories, schools, or infrastructure, and the investment pays for itself. But Southern Europe's borrowing has been mostly to maintain an aging population and outdated systems, pensions, healthcare, and public sector salaries. The young pay the bill, but the bill is growing faster than they can. Combine this with a shrinking workforce, thanks in part to the brain drain, and you have a problem that compounds exponentially. Each young engineer, designer, or entrepreneur who leaves represents not just lost productivity, but also lost future tax revenue. The state must raise taxes on the few who remain, driving more young people out. This is the classic death spiral: fewer workers, lower productivity, more debt, aging populations, and even more talent leaving. Consider it like this. Imagine a city built on bridges, but every year a handful of engineers pack up and move abroad. The bridges crumble slowly, quietly, because the expertise to maintain them is gone. The government borrows money to patch the gaps. It works temporarily, but each patch requires interest payments, which require taxes, which push more young engineers away. The cycle accelerates. Markets notice. Investors watch Italy's bond yields nervously. Spain and Portugal's financial health are similarly scrutinized. If the debt becomes unmanageable, the consequences are not hypothetical. Interest rates rise, borrowing costs increase, and eventually defaults become real. The social contract that each generation works to support the next begins to fail. The young no longer trust that their labor will secure their own future, so they leave. And the old remain, receiving pensions, living their lives comfortably, while the foundations of the country weaken beneath them. The emotional toll parallels the economic one. Young people feel a sense of exile before they even leave. They have grown up in cities that seem like their own. Yet when adulthood arrives, those same cities do not accommodate their ambitions. They experience a strange mix of nostalgia and frustration. The past is preserved in museums, but the present cannot support them. They look at their diploma, their years of study, their energy, and realize it was an investment that their country refuses to honor. In its place, debt piles up, systems falter, progress stalls, and a generation capable of building a future sits in airports, wondering where their skills will be valued. The combination of innovation vacuum and debt is devastating. Without innovation, economies stagnate. Without young workers, debt burdens increase, and without both, the very culture and identity of these countries are at risk. Southern Europe risks becoming a theme park, a place admired for its beauty and history, but with little ability to shape its own future. Tourists stroll through ancient streets, sipping coffee, unaware that the young people who should be running businesses, creating technology, and building communities have gone elsewhere. The country becomes a passive spectator, consuming foreign technology, relying on tourism, and paying off debts that its productive population no longer generates. Cultural relevance fades, economic relevance fades, and slowly the sense of national purpose erodes them. In the end, these two crises are intertwined. The departure of the young innovators creates the vacuum. The aging population and mounting debt exacerbate it. Every brain that leaves is both a cultural and economic loss. Every unfilled job, every abandoned startup, Every unpaid future tax is another brick in the wall separating southern Europe from the modern global economy. The clock is ticking. If the trends continue, the cradle of Western civilization may remain a museum, not just of its past, but of its future. Beautiful, sun-drenched, admired by the world, yet quietly fading, as the very people who could have written the next chapter are living somewhere else.